With that, I'm going to introduce Cami Fournier. Cami has over 10 years of product management experience from a number of B2B SaaS startups, and she's currently one of our senior product managers here on our team at Productboard, with a focus on evolving our insights offering. Before joining the startup scene, Cami studied business psychology and management in London, and after graduating from the London School of Economics, she's worked for several tech companies in London and Prague. Outside of work, you'll find her engaged as a parent, cooking, baking, and climbing, and also taking care of, if I remember correctly, a little chameleon or lizard in her life. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Cami, and she'll get things started on this side, and we'll get going.
Skip the introductions and let's get into the agenda. This hopefully is not going to be a surprise to anyone on the call. We're going to be talking about continuous product discovery. I'm going to do a super quick intro on the theory. But I'm hoping that the group today knows a little bit about it already, and then is eager to learn about how we do discovery at Productboard and how we use Productboard to do product discovery. And then I'm gonna just highlight a couple of things that are important starting with product discovery, but all the stuff that I haven't mentioned, but you should keep in mind. So obviously you're not gonna be able to cover everything today, but hopefully you're gonna be coming out of this session a little bit more with more actionable insights in terms of how product discovery can be done. Awesome. Without further ado, a little bit of a problem statement in the beginning. We know that most products fail. That's a bit of a problem. We would obviously like that all the things that we come up with and ship are well received by the market. That is not the case. But there is a lot of research done in terms of how we can alleviate this. And one of the big things that you can do about it is do product discovery. So that's why we're having the talk today. We all want to build products that matter and build stuff that people actually care about, that they find value in. So hopefully with today's recipes, you'll be able to ship their products tomorrow. Just a quick recap of how I'm thinking about, and this is obviously stolen definition, but this definition resonates with me, and this is how I'm going to be framing it. So continuous product discovery is data-informed reduction of uncertainty. So we are doing some research, we're doing some learnings, so that we can then solve problems that are worth solving, and then that we can build solutions that are worth building. And then the really important thing is for the whole presentation and overall when thinking about discovery, it's not a linear process. You will be seeing that I'm presenting about some like activities that have some form of product lifecycle, but it's very messy. It's not like you're going to plan your like discovery for day one, and then it's just going to nicely come in together. It's a messy process. There's a lot of things happening at the same time, a lot of waiting for some results. And in the meantime, you're doing something else. I'm obviously going to be simplifying it in a linear fashion today, but do please keep in mind that it's not linear stuff. It's not one step after each other that you're going to be doing. And also another thing that I'm going to call out, and then expand on a little bit later, it is a cross-functional effort. I have actually seen a couple of people in the participants list which are not product managers, but I do still think that there is a vast majority of product managers on the call. This is not about just the product managers doing the work. This is about a lot of other people. It's about designers, it's about engineers. And whenever I'm talking about the team or that someone is doing something, it doesn't mean that should be the product manager. So I just want to highlight it here. Hopefully that makes sense. And then one more thing in terms of like how to linearize the non-linear activities. The way I'm thinking about it, this is something that I kind of revamped from some resources that I've seen online, is really plugging in continuous discovery as the foundation for both the product strategy and the product execution. Obviously, sometimes you're focusing more on strategy, sometimes you're focusing more on execution. But in the meantime, for each of those parts, so that your product succeeds, you need to be doing your discovery. You cannot have successful strategy if you're not doing any discovery. And likewise, you cannot have successful product execution if you're not doing a discovery. And I feel like from the experiences that I've had, some people really focus on doing discovery just in this area. And they think, oh, we are doing discovery, we are talking to customers, but they are really focusing on just that one project. And within that realm, they are doing discovery. And what I would like everyone coming out of today is to think bigger, especially if you're like individual contributor, product manager, think bigger, think about, okay, so how does it plug into the strategy? Like, what is the market saying? What are some of the things that I'm not actually working on today and people are saying, but I still should be paying attention to? Obviously, you need to balance it out so that you can do your job effectively. But definitely, like, at least for me personally, I was very much focused here, especially in the beginning of my career. And since joining Productboard, I really realized that, okay, there is so much more that we could be doing. And that's been one of the best learning experiences at Productboard since I joined. So just want to give this as a takeaway. And one more theory slide, and then we're going to jump into the deep dive. I was already mentioning it on the definition, that it's cross-functional effort. It should not look like this. It shouldn't be it's the designer's fault or the designer should do this. It should not be about the engineering didn't give me this, so sorry, it doesn't work. It really should be a collaboration. And already when I was telling you about the product strategy and the whole execution process, very often what I've seen is that product managers run off somewhere, they close themselves in a workshop, and they come up with these great ideas, and they haven't talked to the designer, they just come with their thing, and they give it to them, okay, design this. And then even worse, 5 months later, the engineer comes in and they're like, well, guys, like, have you lost your mind? This is just not feasible. So we definitely don't want to do that. There is a really good article about how product teams should be working from Marty Kagan about how empowered teams look like. But definitely keep this in mind. And sometimes it, at least for me, it didn't feel natural to involve engineering from like strategy stage, but it helps so much. They have great ideas. They are very grounded. So I highly recommend it. So definitely invite them to the strategic workshops and invite them to drafting your team's strategy for the year, for example. So that's something actionable that you can do already. And obviously talk to leadership and go to market teams. But that's me rambling on the theory of stuff. You see nice little thing where it all comes together, and that's where you're going to make best product decisions. Read this article if you want more information. But this is it on the intro. And now let's talk about how stuff happens at Productboard. Okay, back to this one. On one side, we have product strategy. On another side, we have product execution. And before I reveal how stuff is happening at Productboard, I would really appreciate if you just take a couple of seconds, think about, okay, what are some of the techniques that perhaps you do in your company that you think that fits somewhere for the continuous discovery of strategy or continuous discovery of product execution, and just drop them in the chat. Just give me a couple. I'm not going to torture it on it, but just take a moment, even if you don't want to write it in the chat, that's fine. But think about what do you expect that are some of the techniques that I'm going to be highlighting. And then you'll be able to compare whether some of them have matched or not. So feel to drop them in. And I'm going to do a slow reveal of what it actually is at Productboard that we use as a team, as pillars or tribes, and whether that's on the strategic or the execution side. This, by the way, disclaimer, this slide is one of the heavy ones on text. I'm going to be spending a lot of talking in terms of the techniques. All of them you will be able to read up on by keyword search in terms of like the theory of it and some examples online. But I'm going to be focusing a lot more on the how-to of how it actually looks in Productboard later on. So bear with me on this slide. The first one, hopefully an obvious one. If you want to do discovery, you want to be collecting feedback and you want to organize that feedback in some meaningful fashion. On the strategic side, what we do is that we obviously have a lot of customer touch points as product managers, especially. And we just sometimes jump on prospect calls or just some feedback sessions and just listen in what people have to tell us, or we give them some advice in terms of how something could be done. And these are not these are more exploratory. They are not something that we go with an intent. It's really for the customer, and then we just hear what they have to say. And the same thing goes for feedback that is not something that you're looking for, but people are just giving you either, for example, through the community or the support team, or even your go-to-market team sharing. And this is like incoming, and you don't really, you just need to listen and pay a little bit of attention. The other thing that we have is our portal, Productboard portal. We listen in both to the woes, but also the ideas coming in. And then also something that we do proactively, that actually was some of the things that we measured to around last year, where it really started being very organized, is we do product surveys regularly. Overall, as a product, we measure our NPS or CSAT on the tribe level. When I'm talking about tribes, that means like bigger parts of the offering. So you could think about, for example, the insights product, which it has anything to do with discovery and learning and listening to customers. And on the other hand, we, for example, have prioritization. So that would be another tribe. So for those granular jobs to be done, we also send out some surveys on a regular basis, and just so that we listen to the market from much broader scope. So you might actually see some of them popping up if you're using Productboard every now and then. So that's how we listen to the market and feed our strategy with. And on the product execution, we obviously do much more focused interviews with our customers. We have much more focused portal cards for the specific problems we are working on or considering, or even just validating the solutions. And then we also do specific surveys for CSAT or product market fit, especially after launching, if we want to understand how people are using something that we've launched recently, or something that we see some engagement that is going up and down. The next one is key metrics analysis, and that's a very big part of product management. And I personally don't like to delegate it all that much. I like to be quite hands-on with product analytics, and I think that does make me a better product manager. And something also that I really appreciate at Productboard is that we have North Star metrics for the whole product. For example, it's weekly active makers. So how many of our makers come into the product and interact with it weekly. Or for example, on the tribe level, we have weekly learning makers. So subset of events that the active makers do, and we consider learning. So that's something that I, for example, would be defining is some of those is one of the interactions in my functionality considered learning. And if it is, then we would add it to our definition of our North Star. And that's been super, super helpful to align around, okay, should we build this? Should we not build this? Are we actually going to move the metrics that we want to move? Or are we just doing it because it looks cool? So that really helps align everyone. And then we just monitor our product health metrics, like are people coming to the different solutions? Is it being used? Is it being adopted? And just monitor a couple of those dashboards. And on the product execution, we always start with some KRs, key results for individual objectives, where we said, okay, how much engagement do we expect? How much adoption do we expect? Retention. And that also really helps to make some of those prioritization calls. So if you don't have instrumentation in your product, take a step back and really think about a strategy. It doesn't have to be yourself, but as a company, definitely something that's super, super important to do product well. And then competitive analysis. We have really great resources from our product marketing team, where on regular basis we have roundups around the competition, but also the individual product managers have their favorite competitors, where we watch very regularly, for example, the release notes or the marketing that our competition is working on, so that we see what's trending in the market. Also, big kudos to Scott, because he also shares a lot of the competitive intel, which is super valuable. And on the more focused stuff, when we are working on some big initiative, we put a matrix together. We are thinking, okay, how do other solutions solve this, so that we are not reinventing the wheel, because obviously too much effort, and how can we do it there? So we also do the roundup there. Do bear with me. I know this is a lot of talking, a lot of text, but almost there, and it's gonna go much quicker. Obviously, on the design side, we do prototyping. We have obviously different granularity on the strategic side, where we're just exploring something. We're doing super low fidelity exploration, but this really helps put together our product briefs and align with engineering. So it is effort, but even if it's not great, and even if it's just drawn up on paper, definitely worth doing. And then we're ranging from low fidelity to high fidelity prototypes, or even POCs for the execution. And then a bunch of other techniques like impact mapping, ideation workshops, opportunity solution tree, story mapping, dog food tests. I think dog food tests maybe are not as well known as a term. That's really testing our product internally. Obviously, as product management as a product manager building product management software, that makes it really easy because we just release everything, and then our product managers and designers and engineering managers go in, and everyone just tests it, and naturally we just catch a lot of the weirdness and bugs and provide feedback to each other. So that's making our life quite a bit easier. And then also early adopter programs we have. So we try to launch stuff early to just a couple of customers to test the waters, tweak the solution. As I was saying when I started about this slide, all of these techniques are super well documented. On some of them, there are actually books written. So if something doesn't feel familiar, you would like to learn more about, I encourage you to just go search for it, or just reach out in the community. And I'm sure there's a ton of people that can have tips, or you can ask me about it later as well. But without further ado, let me jump into continuous discovery using Productboard. So how do we actually dog food as well, in terms of like how do we actually use Productboard internally? Again, I'm tying it to this linear, non-linear visualization of like, what are some of the things that drive your product strategy in terms of continuous discovery? What are some of the things that power your product execution? So I've broken it down into 3 kind of linear-ish areas so that I can speak about it without jumping around too much. And then the first one is really all-encompassing. You always want to be reading feedback. You always want to be listening to the market, and specifically listen to the areas that you care about in some form and shape. It doesn't have to be just the thing that you're working on now, but you have like broader ownership. For example, the product manager for insights, not all of insights, but some jobs in insights. So even though we are, for example, now working on navigation within insights, I would be listening to all other feedback in my realm as well. Then there is leveraging insights to identify the right problems to focus on. I'm going to talk about it as well. And then there is double diamond. And you see that when you map it to this broader life cycle of product management, they have different spans. And as I was saying initially, a lot of people just thinking about this, like you already have an objective, you already have a problem, kind of define some area, and you just want to go double diamond. I'm going to talk about what it means exactly, but I really want to impart the fact that there is so much more you can be doing, and you should be finding time to be doing that. Okay. Let's talk about each one of those. I have a bunch of slides for each of these red rectangles. Okay, how to continuously learn from notes that matter to you. I think this one is really great to get empathy and really think strategically. It's helped me immensely. And really the main reasons why you really should find the time for it. And I know it's hard, we're all very busy, but it does help so much, is that it keeps you grounded to the reality of all of your product, and it prevents you from over optimizing for the one solution that you're working on actively. And I've seen this over and over again, where people coming with these great ideas, but it just breaks the entire flow of the rest of the product. And also it makes it easier to not focus on the last customer that you've spoken to. And it doesn't actually have to be yourself, but it could also be your product director, it could be your VP of sales, where you're like, okay, it's great that you told me, but I have all this evidence that actually a bunch of other people are talking about something else. And I know that it seems important because you just talked to this person. So definitely something to give you also the balance of, okay, how important is it really? And then obviously continually you will be able to come up with those ideas and turn the feedback into some insights that you can later action. Okay, so how do you actually do it? I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm going to do broad strokes here of how it works in Productboard, but we have whole best practices written up on our help center, which I'm going to be sharing later in the recap. But essentially, the first step on the journey is you want all of your feedback coming into Productboard. What you do is that you integrate all of your customer conversations, design interviews, research, some key conversation with sales through a bunch of different integrations that we have. They come in as notes, and then you can start doing magic. How to set it up, what are some of the options, as I said in the article, and there's a lot of detailed guides how to do it. Feel free to pop any questions if you have any. And then in the next step, this is something that we've been improving a lot so that it's not as much effort. You need to make sure that you have some system where where the notes that are coming in are gonna find the person that can actually action it. So on that front, you want to take your product overall and dissect it in some areas. For inspiration, for example, we have insights. We have broken it down into, for example, insights trends or insights filters, insights search. We have the node as the detail, and that's owned by different people or the same people. And then we have integrations owned by someone else. And even if we are not working on it actively, every single part of the product has a product owner and a designer and engineering team assigned to it. So that we can not only come up with better solutions and evolve the offering, but also so that we can maintain it, so that we know who's the person to contact. And based on that, we can set up our node views and insights automation, our tagging, so that every node finds its owner. And again, I'm not going to go into the detailed setup, but I have written the very, very detailed setup with screens and exactly how to guide in our best practices. Again, we'll be sharing it later. But this way, you don't have to do all that much manually, and it just comes into the person's nodes assigned to me view, and they can take it from there. And hopefully this should be very, very little effort. But happy to talk to you guys about any specific questions that you have later on in the Q&A. And then in the third step, if you're working with the nodes, this is where actually stuff comes into fruition. You want to take your individual nodes that have been assigned to you, go through them and turn them into insights where you take the node, you highlight it, you assign it some importance, you link it to your hierarchy, which is a bunch of your ideas or stuff that you're working on, so that you can later work on that. And this really gives you the means to prioritize the right things to build. And also lets you come back to the quotes and the users that you are interested in. And that's completely changed my life as a product manager. Like, this is absolutely my favorite part. I really think that is adding so much value to me and giving me empathy. So I actually really enjoy it. And all of this stuff, this is daily, weekly cadence from all of these 3 steps. So, for example, I book an hour a week on my calendar to just take a look at my notes. So I recommend you do that. And let's definitely talk about it in Q&A. If you have questions, I see that there are some popping up, but I'm gonna go and read them. And I'll point also to some best practices later if needed. Okay, so that was the first one. I know this one was a quick one and not as actionable as maybe some of you would like, but I promise that in the best practices, it is actionable. But let's talk about how you can take all of this good stuff that you've collected and you categorize and you turn it into those insights, you linked it to a hierarchy, how you can take all of that collected feedback and use it to decide what to build next. And that is to inform your strategy, but that can be actually on much more micro level of within your initiative. you might actually have some opportunistic feedback coming in. So why would you want to do that? Well, obviously, you want to figure out what matters most to your customers. And although you can sort by user impact score or sort by a specific segment, it is not something that I would recommend absolutely prioritizing against as the only thing that you're prioritizing against. I always speak about this something that you should be getting inspiration from, because naturally your customers will complain about the stuff that doesn't work, or they will say, okay, this competitor has it, but they're not necessarily going to come up with these really big, broad, radical innovation ideas that maybe are the biggest opportunity you have. So I always take it with a pinch of salt. There's very few customers that even to us, despite being product managers, they actually write the right context or the granularity of like, this is a problem, this is what I want your product to solve. They're mostly like, oh, I'm irritated, this doesn't work. This is the type of feedback that we get so much more of. So please take it as inspiration. I know that it's really easy to sort by user impact score as the first thing. And yes, it is an indicator, but you should consider all the other stuff in the equation as well. It can give you the patterns for your long-term strategy, but there is a lot more to prioritization. But that's not the point of today's session. I just want to really give you the takeaway of it should be inspiration, not the only metric to prioritize by. Okay, so how can you actually do it? Where do you go in the Productboard to get inspired? So the first thing that you can do, and that's something that I would recommend you do on monthly and quarterly basis, is just poke about in insights trends. That is on the insights board. You can go in here in insights and think about what are some of the things that you have some hypothesis about. So either if you link religiously and everything is linked, just filter it to the section of your hierarchy that you're working with. If your team is maybe not so great at really linking all of the feedback, you can use topics, you can use tags if you're good at tagging, or if you don't really have all this categorization set up, just go and search for keywords. And there you will be able to see whether some keywords are coming up more or less, what's been trending, which segments have been talking about it, what are some of the key topics that are coming up. That's machine learning, so you obviously are going to have to tweak it a little bit, but it should give you something. And then also there is another module for tags. You can also obviously take a look at the most recent like overall feedback historically and see like whether it's coming up or down. Sometimes actually coming down is a good thing because maybe you've released something recently and somehow people stop talking about this being a problem, so that could be a good thing. So you obviously want to understand like you want to understand your product so that you can interpret the data. But also what I really like is in this feature, trending features, you can actually toggle under this little wheel, which may be a little bit hidden, whether you want to be looking at the component level or feature level. So for example, if I were the director of the whole product, maybe I just care about the comparison product by product or component to component. But as a product manager just working with a team, maybe I actually care just about my features. So that's something that you can toggle on and off. So I really like that. And actually, this is something that we released a year and a bit ago, and I'm going to be using it as an example. So I'm going to go a little bit meta on how we've gone about building this solution. Okie dokie. So you can take this, that's one part of your inspiration. And then the other part is how can you get inspired on your features board where there is a lot of context from insights so that you can prioritize stuff, right? So the first thing that I absolutely recommend you do without taking a look, think about whether you want to be looking at the last 90 days or last 12 months. I usually use 12 months on features board. And then you can add a couple of columns to your sorted list of features where you have your impact score, you have your aggregated company value that hooks up through custom fields of companies through either Salesforce or import. You have your opportunity value, which is also pulled from Salesforce. And then you can have your dynamic segments that you can define with a bunch of different rules. You set it all up. We have documentation for all of this if you're interested. And then you just sort by the different things that actually matter to you. And you will start seeing that maybe something is coming up really high in terms of how much people are talking about it, how much user score it's getting. But actually, when you look at the revenue behind it, the first thing that people are talking most about is actually not backed by so much revenue. So that's something that's been a really great release of last year, probably one of my favorite features. And you can really start building a case, and then you can talk to your leadership in terms of what are the things that you really want to be prioritizing by. And then you can obviously filter by other stuff. Maybe you just want to be prioritizing within the enterprise segment or within the startup segment. And obviously it does take some setup, but once you get it in, it makes a lot of the stakeholder conversations much easier. And again, this is something that I do definitely at least quarterly when I'm preparing for the quarterly prioritization and strategy meetings. But I'm a curious PM, so I come in here pretty regularly just to poke about in terms of what's been coming up. And as usual, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A and we can take a look at them later. Okay, so now you've got some of the inspiration from your trends. You got some inspiration from your features board. And then what do you do with it? This is how we do a product board. This is something that's worked really well for me. And that's taking all of this good stuff, being aware of the problem, and trying to frame it as an objective. So what do we want to do? And this is something that we do bottom up in the teams where we are, okay, we should probably be doing this. And when we start pitching it to our tribe leadership, and then through that to senior leadership, where we kind of, okay, so we want to do it. And actually you will see here that actually this is called Insight Strengths. It's something that we released, but when it's at the inception, this would actually be a problem statement, which you can see here. It probably would be a little bit smaller. And then we have a template for our objectives where we say, okay, this is the problem. Sometimes we link to like a bigger analysis of what the problem is exactly. We connect it to our company goals. We say, okay, what is the segment that we are targeting here, because that makes such a big difference in terms of which segment it should be working for or not. Because you can't make everyone happy. It's sad, but you can't. And then we are defining our success metrics. And then you're doing like broad strokes of what are the milestones or the initiatives that you have in mind. And if I were able to scroll, which I'm not going to do in here because I can't actually scroll in the screenshot, you generally would see some link either to Figma or just a screenshot, just broad strokes of how it looks like. And obviously then it gets clearer and clearer. But at the beginning, we always start with this, and then we just run around and talk with people. We send one-pagers for feedback, and then hopefully it makes it on the roadmap. So there's a lot of hustling and pitching going around. Definitely one big learning as someone who is on the individual contributor path is, if you think that you have a great idea, go and sell it. And then hopefully it's going to get built. Don't wait for leadership to just go and tell you. Because you're closer to the feedback, you're closer to the solution. Take ownership and just don't wait for someone to ask you what your ideas are. Just bring them together because you're reading all of that good feedback. So now you take all of this good stuff, assume that you sold it, and it makes it on your strategic roadmap. We have this specific roadmap, which is insights. I'm gonna grade. I have graded out because I shouldn't be sharing exactly everything because it's obviously subject to change. And we have our swim lanes by team. And then we just see what all of the teams are working on together. And that is something that obviously for these to get created, it's kind of organic whenever you're ready. But definitely we come together, we review whether everything makes sense on the quarterly planning. And we also track the progress on the bi-weekly check-ins. But in terms of the inception, anyone can come at any time and put it together. But there are some regular touch points that we go through. So now you have your product objectives, everything has come together. And how do you go from there into the area of, okay, your team has that specific objective that they are working against for the next couple of many weeks or months your leadership team has agreed to. And then you're really going deep into the discovery world, into the double diamond. That's what we are using here at Productboard, so that you're shipping the best possible product to the market. So how does that work with Productboard? But before I go into that, a little bit of theory, which I imagine for most people is going to be obvious, but in case it's not, double diamond approach is really about breaking your objectives down in the problem area and your solution area. They're about diverging and converging. There is a ton of materials about this. This is one of the favorite methodologies that I see quoted. And I have also linked to materials that you can read more about the theory behind and the methodology. So if you want to do some background, then definitely you can backtrack. But what I'm going to be focusing on is how does it look in Productboard? What are some of the outputs that you can get to in Productboard? How you set it up so that you actually build something. So how do you get started? First, you need to realize that there is a problem. If you get backing and agreement that is actually a problem in some shape and form, and you want to go and discover some what further, what you can do is, okay, I've started seeing some patterns. I know that there is like a ton of requests coming about this. And I would have shown the example of trends, but obviously the hierarchy for that has changed so much since. So I can't actually give you the initial, how it actually looked before we started, because I didn't take a screenshot, because I didn't know that I'm going to have this talk 2 years later. But essentially, you just go in, you take a look at your hierarchy, and you just say, okay, so what are all the things that people are talking about? So at the time, I would have been filtering for like analytics, for trends, surfacing insights, bunch of different stuff. And do we have actually anything in the hierarchy that already talks about it? Maybe it is in different places because we haven't really thought about it in this particular way. And I just search for a bunch of stuff. I put it under the objective that I'm thinking about putting together. And then in the next step, what I do is that it's all under this objective. And then, I'm just like keeping it together and kind of identifying some of the areas like where I want to be focusing on, reading a little bit whether it's relevant, where it's not relevant, reading the feedback that is linked here. But I'm kind of really doing just broad strokes, not going deep yet. What I'm then going to do is take a look at all the feedback that I have identified from the features. So from here, sorry, I'm having my Zoom in the way. I'm clicking on the individual things that I have actually linked. I'm opening them up and I'm taking a look through all of the feedback that has come through on my insights tab of the individual features. And I take that and I will just split it differently because maybe some of it fits, some of it doesn't fit. So I'll just link a bunch of these things and okay, this is a go. So I link it to another feature that I want to organize myself under, or some of the stuff actually isn't a good fit. So I'll remove it and just essentially like reframe it for myself. And also at the same time, maybe we haven't captured some of the nodes that actually are relevant. So again, I'm going to do a keyword search for a bunch of stuff so that I can see some nodes that may have gotten missed. Obviously, that depends how much volume of nodes you have. Sometimes you have so much feedback that you don't really need more, but sometimes you actually are struggling for more feedback. So then definitely something to do is go into nodes and just filter for them. Here it says collection should be saying node views today, so apologies for that. And really, this is a one-off exercise when you're kicking off your initiative and you're just like trying to wrap your head around it. And that is something that you can divide and conquer with your designer or potentially researcher if you have one. We don't, but something that you can do. And sometimes we actually even involve the engineers. So some are more and some are less excited about this. And now you should have a broad idea of what the problem is. And at this point, I would recommend you start reaching out to some of the users that you want to interview. And through this exercise, you already should have pretty good group of people that have somehow expressed that they have this problem or that they are keen for you to fix it. So you can take all the things that they have submitted, you can export the context and reach out to them. Or if you are using Portal, if you have it published, you can also send out Portal card update where you say, hey guys, we are actually considering building this. If you are interested in taking part in our discovery interviews, sign up here. Let us know. We'll be happy to talk to you. Or if you just want to reach out to like a couple of people, you can just click on the user here. It's going to open their detail. You can grab their email and just email them. So it's good to identify what size of interviews you want to do before, because sometimes it's a little bit difficult to recruit for people. So you want to identify potentially more, like bigger pool of people that you could potentially contact. Sometimes you also want to like take a look at the segmentation data, maybe from some of your analytics tools. Prepare this database of potential people to reach out to. Set yourself a goal of, okay, I want to talk in this round to 10 people. And then like send those batches out. Obviously, if you're sending portal cards, you will need to manage in terms of like whether you want to, like if too many people sign up, then that's a good problem to have, but you can always say no. Some folks actually directly use Calendly link where they say, okay, just pop something in my Calendly and then worst case you cancel. But that's unusual in my experience. Usually it's a little bit harder. So just send a couple of batches out and then go talk to customers. When you're talking to customers, obviously have your script ready. And then on that script, you take it, you prepare it with your designer. Maybe you're going to be using prototypes already at this point. And then what we do when we go to interviews, we will say, we will prepare our script. It differs vastly from whether it's a problem script, validation, etc. But every time we speak to a customer, we will come back to Productboard. I usually do the typing and my designer does the managing of the interview. And directly during the interview, I'm just typing up into Productboard, who is it that we are talking about? What are we talking about in terms of like, are there any tags? I give the title in terms of like, this is interview with this and this person from this company. And I already have this template prepared. This is my favorite one. If you guys want to reuse it, feel free. That we always have as one of the templates in the Productboard. So I just go in here. I then link to my recordings, do a little bit of blurb. And down here, I'm just doing all the raw notes, all the ugly stuff. And some of the key things I'm already like making bold. And at the end of the interview, after each interview, we have like 15-minute debrief with the designer, myself, and actually on all of our interviews, unless logistics don't allow it, we actually have engineers as well, at least one. So it's actually 3 people generally coming to the interviews with our customers so that everyone has the context. And we are just doing a debrief at the end of it to share what did we take away from that interview, and then we go away and link it up to our hierarchy. And this is something that you can do throughout the whole discovery process. I'm highlighting in the first phase just because that's where you're starting, but this is something that you're going to do over and over again. But maybe the template is going to change. Our usability testing template is very different. It's much more like scenario based. So you want to think about like, what are you going to ask? Don't just show up and talk about it. But that's hopefully clear, and obviously a lot of best practices in terms of how to do interviews. So that's how we do that. You have your notes in there, and then you should have pretty good idea of what are all the problems there in the world. And then you start converging, start putting it together so that your problem starts crystallizing. And some of the things that you will be, what I would be expecting as an output is really defining what are the problem areas and then prioritizing those. So this is very much just taking all of the stuff that you've learned, putting it together. And generally we have some interactive, hopefully in-person exercise where we're just talking about it, whiteboarding, doing ideation workshop, ton of resources on that. And then everything that crystallizes, we then bring together, we frame it very cleanly in some form and shape in the language that fits us. Generally, we start from jobs to be done, and then we start breaking it down and share this, like, these are our problem statements. that we have identified for this particular area. So we break that down, and then we definitely update our stakeholders so that they know what is it that we've come up with. This is kind of like a checkpoint for us, where we want to say, okay, this is how we are approaching it. And for us as a tribe, we always have every 2 weeks reviews of our objectives. And we also have weekly objective updates that we are writing in the comments of individual objectives. But there is also something that the product managers just reach out to, okay, I'm now ready to have some problem review. So they pop in to product reviews, discovery reviews that we call them. We always have them on Thursday. And it's like, if you have something to share, you come in, you book your slot in the agenda, and you just present to the rest of the team, which is product managers, sometimes designers, and a bunch of people from leadership. So you kind of get a sense check of, okay, are we on the right track or not? There is sometimes course correcting from leadership that sees the broader picture. So we might reframe it, but definitely you do want to do the touch point so that you don't run off doing something completely else. Been there, done that, don't want to do it again. Okay, if any questions, again, pop it in the Q&A. And then assume that everyone is, yay, you got the problem nailed. There is not too much reiteration, which does actually happen. But you now have your problem defined. It's clearly stated in your product board. What you do next is really go into the solution area, where you, in the first stage, which is generally, I find, the most exciting for everyone involved, is you just go crazy, no limits, you diverge. What are all the different things that we could build? And you have, okay, we could build all these other things. It's amazing. And we can like have all this feedback, and it's like super awesome. We break it down usually in some solutions, but kind of story mapping way, where like some of them are really solution based, but sometimes it's also like, okay, how do you access it, and what do you do with it next? And we break it down, and some stuff is going to make it, some stuff is not going to make it. And this is again something that is a crystallization of a workshop that we do with the triad, not the entire team in terms of like 10 people, but it would be the PM, the designer, and engineering manager and engineering lead. In terms of the like initiative engineer, we actually have those two things split. Happy to talk about it at the end. And we just come together, we do a bunch of ideation, we throw ideas around, we log them all together. Usually I would prepare it async in the hierarchy, and then we would do some scoring. So essentially imagine, here we're going crazy in some room, putting post-it notes, or maybe we're workshopping on some whiteboard. And then I clean it up, I take it away, I put it in a product board, and then we get together and we do an exercise where we're going through the list of things that we've identified. And we're saying, okay, for this idea, it's going to be super valuable, it's a must-have, but it's going to be super, super expensive. And then essentially we take this view, which is, as you see, hierarchy features board, which is filtered for the specific hierarchy. And then we twist it around into matrix, see what is coming up. Maybe we move stuff around because it doesn't seem to be adding up exactly. And then usually the matrix view is what we're sharing with leadership, because they actually find it easier to digest in this way. For me, this is much easier to digest because I have all the context, but visually this is a little bit easier for people to take a look at, okay, what is actually coming up as most important. So we evaluate them, we cut stuff that we're just not going to be able to make as a no-no. And then in the next step, usually here, actually, we do talk to leadership as well. And in the next step, we start coming together in terms of, okay, so what is it that we are actually going to be building? Again, we are doing the validation with leadership internally, but also recap, you do always want to be talking to your customers all the time throughout this process. So even though I didn't have slides about talk to your customers, go on choose to go talk to people, you should be doing that. Usually in this step before, okay, we've kind of identified what we want to build, but we're not exactly sure how it's going to look like. We do send out another round of, okay, talk to us, please. I prefer to post it through a portal where I say, okay, sign up, let us know. And you really start putting your validation together. And then you prioritize. You prioritize in different sequence milestones that you're going to be building. Some stuff is not going to make it. It's fine. You put it by releases. That's all good. And then you can actually get going. You can start delivering. So you can take it from these releases and then put it onto your sprint boards and just run your usual Scrum. And obviously, keep talking to your customers and keep updating your stakeholders. That repeats all the time. And then all the stuff that I haven't talked about. So this is all the how-tos on like how does it look in Productboard. Obviously, ton of stuff in there. And I've been speaking very, very fast. I apologize for it. But there's ton of stuff to keep in mind. Outcomes, segments, responsibilities, who does what, collaboration, process, product ownership, all the stuff you need for success. But it was kind of out of scope of today's session. So happy to talk to anyone about it another time. But without further ado, key takeaways. If you do product discovery well, hopefully you found some inspiration today. Hopefully you're gonna launch better products, fingers crossed. Hopefully I helped a little bit. There's a ton of different techniques, some work for different areas, different types of products. You can't do one size fits all. So be mindful and also be mindful of what do you do at which stage of your discovery. And obviously the techniques and toolings are not the only thing. And that's where it comes to the previous slide where there's so much more to it. But hopefully I was able to give you a little bit that brings your game up as a product manager, designer, engineer, and hopefully you're going to be able to ship better products. And this is it. There's a bunch of other resources in terms of best practices. Also, if you want to read about how we built trends as a case study, how we evolved it, about our decisions on the specific solution, you can take a look there. This is it. And Scott, if you have, please, any follow-up things that you want to fill in or do the Q&A.
Yeah, definitely. Let's jump into Q&A. I know we've only got about 5 minutes left. There's a lot of content there for sure to cover. We'll try to get to as many of these as we can, folks. And then outside of that, feel free to post these inside our community. We'd be happy to have Cami come in and answer any questions afterwards on that side within our Talk Product Board section. So maybe the first one here is, what do you do with the notes that maybe aren't relevant to any of our product strategies and the work that we're doing right now?
Yeah, so it depends on your volume, but we do have the whole product assigned to someone. And even if you're not working on it, we actually go and look at them, we process them, we link them to the hierarchy. There are some companies that struggle with the volume because it's just way too much for one single product manager. And in that case, at least set up your insights automation, tag it, put them in some form of note view. So that's the best thing that you can do. Hopefully that answers it, but it's also one of the frequently asked questions that is in the best practices article that we have. Yeah,
definitely. I know lots of interest in taking all the notes that we've got and kind of organizing them into a larger narrative. So linking those notes and quotes and everything into something that tells the story essentially of the problem you're looking to solve and the key things that you want to, how do you tackle that challenge inside Productboard?
Well, that's the fun part. That's where you're really gonna get creative. I recommend you saying, okay, I'm going for a delivery vacation for a couple of days. You close yourself somewhere in a room and don't talk to people, and just really give yourself the space to focus. Give yourself the time, maybe break it down with your team. And just go read it and reorganize it and organize it some more. That's why I was showing the like how you go into the individual insight steps. How do you just link it somewhere for the beginning, and then you can be taking it away in bulk, putting it somewhere else. And then you just start creating the story. That is really the magical art of product management. I don't have one answer, but just put it somewhere originally. And as you're evolving it, just relink it and then reframe it with your team, see if it fits with them, and then talk to people, try to run it by someone. Does it resonate? And then hopefully it's going to crystallize. But really, that's art. That's really core of product management.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of interest too in like how we divide and conquer essentially our insights coming in. Does the team really divide the assignment of that? Is there somebody in charge of sort of farming it out to other teams? Or is it like really a lot through the automations and other kinds of things that are getting those things assigned to people?
So we have like whole process in terms of how do we slice product management. We have like whole mapping table of which team, which product manager, which product designer owns which area. Also something that is visualized in the best practices I was referring to. So we have like whole mapping table for every single thing of Productboard. And based on that, we have automation rules set up so that it gets to the product manager. If it doesn't get caught by automation, then we do kind of like common responsibility of reassigning the stuff that doesn't get caught, but it's actually quite a small proportion. And there is also some note use which catch some of the stray keywords that we do. Again, in the best practices, you have the how to guide there is the specific setup.
Yeah, definitely. I think the automation's helped a huge ton there, because I know in the past, in a lot of teams I was in, having to reassign things to people and do stuff on that side.
Yeah, that hurts.
How do you deal with essentially the closing of the loop on stuff? And I think there's a lot of interest here and a lot of banter too in the chat on this side. But I think a lot of people view Productboard sometimes as like feedback coming in from a team needs to be responded to by every team member back to a customer or back to a CSM or back to some other, stakeholder essentially on that side, even the customer on the other end of that. But like, how do we approach that? What's our kind of mantra and way of thinking about feedback coming in? Is it like a signal about intention or need or problem that we don't need to necessarily loop back with immediately? Or is it something that we try to close out in some cases? Or I'm curious on the tactics there.
Yep. So we don't close the loop with every single customer on every single node that comes in. We do close the loop by putting stuff on the portal. If it's not on the portal, we're not going to be working on it. And we try to be quite explicit about it with our customers, through our customer success managers, through our support. They're on the ground to answer those questions. If someone really wants a specific answer, usually our customer-facing teams actually can find the answer to fill that. But if it's something that we are actually considering that we are going to be working on, then our primary mode of operation is the portal card updates.
Yeah, great, definitely. How many users should one interview?
It depends on the size of the problem that you have. And it depends on whether it's incremental, whether it's friction, or whether it's something big and bold. The more radical or more risky, the bigger size it is. Like for really big stuff. So for example, for the inside trends, I think end to end, we interviewed 30-ish people. So there was quite a bit of logistic, but nothing crazy. If it's something more incremental, you will see that the patterns repeat after 10. So don't go crazy. That's why I was saying, send it out in batches, see what you're going to learn. And if you need more, send out more. If you're getting different signals, ask more.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, with that, I know we're not going to be able to get to all the questions that we've got. We're at our time here. I'm going to quickly just jump over to wrap things up for the day. Thank you very much, Cami. So just a reminder here as well to fill out our post-event survey. We'd love to get your feedback after the event. And again, if anybody has questions that weren't answered or questions that you do want to get answered about Productboard and how we approach this, we'd be happy to answer questions within our community at any point. Happy to continue the conversation there. We do have lots of events coming up in the next few months here. So definitely a very active set of different speakers. Next week, we've got Anna Dahlstrom coming in, our roundtables, and we also have Tim Herbig next. But definitely check out our full event schedule for lots of learning and lots of opportunities to gain knowledge on this side. We've also got lots of opportunities to speak. So if you've got things or knowledge to share on this side about your product practices, feel free to let us know. We'd be happy to get you involved as a speaker. And also lots of our programs work to help you level up your craft to get better at the work that you do, including our Maker Mentor program, which is quite active right now, and our Product Makers Book Club as well, which meets quarterly. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It was really, really great. Cami, thanks again for sharing your knowledge. I think we could probably spend hours on this topic, and definitely maybe something we can look to explore and expand on later. But thanks again, everybody, for participating and for sharing your experiences today. Take care.